Hi, I'm nervous and I am currently digesting Thanksgiving food. So this week you're getting some low effort content from me because honestly, I thought about just not uploading this week, but I personally am the person who is on holidays kind of and around holidays looking for videos to watch, like new content to watch. So I thought it would be nice for me to give back to that economy of holiday time content. So I am going to react to a video that I've been really excited to watch, and it's going to be a very minimally edited video that I hope you will be able to enjoy the day after Thanksgiving or just in the coming times. So I hope that we can all just sort of hang out together and watch this Narrow Raven theory that we're going to watch today. An important thing I do want to say before I get started with this video is that I'd love to encourage you to watch last week's video I uploaded about Amanda the Adventurer. I'm going over the art that you can find on the walls in that game because they are very interesting and real pieces of art. So if you're interested in a little bit of art history mixed in with the Amanda the Adventurer lore, it would mean a lot to me if you would watch that video because it's not doing very well. And that is very much partially my fault for waiting until Sunday to get it uploaded. I was just struggling with motivation last week. So I would just really love it if you could help that video get a little more love. To those of you who have watched it, thank you so much. Anyway, I just wanted to make sure I encouraged you to go watch that before I started this video. So I hope this will be interesting for you. It is definitely going to be interesting for me. I'm also joined today by my off-brand bear cup because I don't want to support Starbucks, and also I wasn't going to pay that kind of money for a resell cup. Kind of thinking of retrofitting him to be a Freddy Fazbear, like a golden Freddy plushie or something. But I don't know what he should be holding here. If I do that, should it just be like a little like soda-roni or exotic beverage or something? I could like put something there like that, or I don't know, maybe it could just be like plushception and he'll just be holding a smaller version of himself. Could be the walkie-talkie, could be sister location walkie-talkie. I don't know. I would love to hear your thoughts in the comments below. I'm thinking about fashioning him a little hat and scrubbing this off and like giving him a new face and stuff. So anyway, I'd love to hear your thoughts. But otherwise, I guess let me just get into this. I just want to say right before I start this, that if you haven't seen this video, it would mean a lot to me if you would go ahead and go watch this video first before watching my video on it. I know that not all of you will, but even if you don't, I would love if you did, but even if you don't, I would love it if you would still go to the video, support it, like it, leave a comment, something, interact with it. You know, don't let this be a full substitute for watching Narrow Raven's video. Okay.
Shadow Freddy has been missing from FNAF ever since possibly Freddy Fazbear's Pizzeria Simulator, with this black bear that appears in the beginning of the game. Though, Shadow Freddy has slowly begun to fade into a relic of a bygone era. Or is he? Recently, in many of Steelwool's games, this weird character that should be non-canon to the games has been popping up more and more, sometimes even in replacement of roles Shadow Freddy should have. Though, how will the connections I have for you today explain how Shadow Freddy has been replaced by Nightmarion? Well, join me as we look into the agony that has formed both of these creatures to determine if Shadow Freddy is still around, replaced.
I will say this before I keep moving forward. When Narrow says here that they're agony created creatures, I appreciate that because that's kind of how I have viewed the Shadow Animatronics. I don't personally think about the Shadow Animatronics that often. They're not something. Not only is it just that, like, I don't really have an answer, so what would I even talk about? Just beyond saying that, I think that they are agony creations. Also, there's just other things that do interest me more in the series to talk about, so I just haven't ever really, felt inclined to tackle it as a subject. So, I do appreciate, I guess I'm just saying that I'm glad to hear that Narrow Raven is making that call out. And I'm saying that I agree with it. I guess that's what I'm doing here. Okay. Jesus.
Or just removed from existence, and if he's even a shadow creature anymore. Hello everyone, my name is Narrow Raven, and welcome to the Xander Zone. In today's video, we're of course talking about the good old mysteries of the Shadow Animatronics and how they work together in this franchise from FNAF 1 to Secret of the Mimic. As always, if you enjoy, please hit that like subscribe button, share this video with your friends and family, and without further ado, let's get right into the video.
Friends and family, I love that. It's Thanksgiving time. Share it with your friends and with your family. I think I laugh at that just because there's literally no one in my family that I would ever consider sharing a FNAF video with. That's just not really any of their interests.
Before we get into the theory, we have to discuss how Xiao Freddy went from being one of the most mysterious and lore-heavy characters to a character most people forget about in today's era.
Me.
Shadow Freddy first debuted in Five Nights at Freddy's 2, alongside the puppet and his shadowy friend RWQ-FSFASXC. Shadow Freddy would appear in the parts and service area and doesn't actually do anything besides just stare at you and sit there. He doesn't even crash your game like his rabbit counterpart in The Office. However, this was actually bugged, as in the files of FNAF 2, he was supposed to appear in parts and service, and when you look at him, he was supposed to disappear with a metal clanking sound playing as he disappeared.
Information for me.
Though Shadow Freddy does appear somewhere else. You may be wondering where this is.
Shadow
When you first play through FNAF 2,
hold on, are we
these
seeing
cutscenes
this? Hold on. Shadow. This is Shadow Freddy's drag name. Shadow. Let's make some noise for Shadow, please. Welcome to the stage, Shadow. Okay, I'm done.
You may be wondering where this is. Well, when you first play through FNAF 2, you get these cutscenes called dreams. In this, we are in what we believe to be Freddy. However, if you brighten the image, it appears to be a purple Freddy. And you can say this is due to the dark light. However, when you brighten brown, it always turns yellow. So even in the highlighted bits in this, it's still purple like Shadow Freddy. Otherwise, that is his whole purpose in FNAF 2, though he would get promoted
I did not know that.
in the next FNAF game. In FNAF 3, Shadow Freddy takes on the main role in the end of night minigame by luring the player to a room
that
in which
follows suit, literally, LOL, follows suit with FNAF 1 with the purple Freddy costume, Shadow Freddy costume, being a suit that someone who is in the pizza place who maybe not supposed to be gets stuffed into. That's so interesting. I literally did not know that. This is how little I really engage with the Shadow stuff. If this is all like commonplace information, please excuse me. I just don't follow the lore of the Shadows. I do my best, but... And when I say I do my best, I mean I do exactly as much as I'm willing to do, and that is about it. And that is, as far as I'm concerned, that's my best. And that's just simply the way that it is going to be. Okay, we'll get back in here.
Animatronics can't enter this said room, aka the safe room. Then William comes out and dismantles each animatronic each night until the 5th night, in which Shadow Freddy doesn't appear, and well, you know the rest. Though we get into our possible last appearance of Shadow Freddy in this franchise, FNAF 4. Shadow Freddy isn't necessarily flat out referenced in this game if you just play it normally, even through to Night 6 and even the secret 420 mode. However, there is a blacked out bear in this game called Nightmare. Now, something not everyone knows is this horrifying bear is called Shadow Freddy in the game's files. Now, we know this is intentional due to Scott at the time of FNAF 4 using codes in teasers to help tease the game, and later in Sister Location and FFPS with the same ideas. The why Nightmare is such an apparent, important part of FNAF 4, essentially being its final boss, is still up in the air, though I think that's something we'll end up solving pretty soon here. Now, earlier I said that FNAF 4 was his possible last appearance, possible being the key word, as there's speculation that in FFPS, when you first launch the game and play the pizza minigame, a black bear appears and starts stopping you from feeding the kids. Now, this is speculated to be Shadow Freddy in some people's eyes, and as I can agree, it's hard to say for sure. So I'll let that one be up to you all after this video, as I do have a solid solution to this mystery.
Okay.
Though we have 2 more appearances of this Shadow.
I would venture to say I would lean towards yes, that this is Shadow Freddy. I would say I'm solid 75%, which I think is really good for Five Nights at Freddy's. For me, in particular.
Freddy character. The next one is in UCN as Nightmare. I don't think I need to re-explain why this is most likely Shadow Freddy, as we already covered this with FNAF 4. Though the last time we saw this character was in 2023, in the FNAF movie where Max is stuffed inside of a Shadow Freddy costume after being killed by Freddy Fazbear. Shadow Freddy doesn't really do much in this movie besides just sit there all dismantled, but maybe we'll see more of him in the second movie.
Okay, but he doesn't do...
Now we can get into the juicy bits of this theory.
To be fair, he doesn't do much more than that in the second game as well. Okay.
Alright, so we have to touch up on how similar the puppet and Shadow Freddy are to one another in these games, as it's actually kinda scary. So first we have FNAF 2, and you're probably wondering, Raven, how can the puppet who sits in a box and Shadow Freddy, who manifests in the parts and service, have any similarities? Well, honestly, in FNAF 2 alone, you'd be completely right. Though, if we take a look at FNAF 2 and 3 together, we can piece together the start of this theory. In FNAF 2, if you die, you have a really rare chance to get one of 4 minigames, being Foxy Go Go Go, Save Him, Give Gifts Give Life, and save them. The one we'll be focusing on today is Save Them. In this death minigame, you awaken as Withered Freddy in the FNAF 2 location, and when you leave parts of service, the puppet greets you and you're meant to follow the puppet. Now, if you do follow the puppet perfectly, odds are you'll make it to the puppet's box, and maybe along the way you'll see Golden Freddy. However, if you decide to explore too much, Purple Guy, aka William Afton, will appear and attack the player, giving you a game over with text in the corners saying, You can't. So how's this timed with Shadow Freddy? Well, in FNAF 3, after every night we experience the Follow Me minigames. In these minigames, Shadow Freddy lures in order Freddy, Bonnie, Chica, then Foxy around the location, and you can again ignore Shadow Freddy and find a secret in one of the hallways. However, eventually you'll end up outside the safe room in which William pops out and dismantles the animatronic you're playing as. So there's two ways we can connect this to Shadow Freddy and the puppet. First is the obvious that both of these have Freddy following someone and William can attack the player, with Puppet making you follow it and save them, and Shadow Freddy making you follow it and follow me. Next is actually the dream cutscenes we brought up earlier. In this, we clearly have Shadow Freddy as who we are playing as, since when brightened it becomes purple and not yellow like brown should be when brightened. However, we are of course in the FNAF 1 location with the puppet being here, simply on the final 4th one in which we never get to see the final 5th one. Now, why is this a connection to me? Well, I believe that this is the lead up to Follow Me, but before Scott actually knew what he was fully doing with it, as we have 4 cutscenes with this purple bear, and just like in FNAF 3, the final 5th one has Shadow Freddy missing, drawing a connection between this cutscene and this minigame. However, it's interesting that in the last appearance, we see the puppet here, which to me could be a huge wrench in our plans here as well. They're both in the same room, so this must mean that it can't be the puppet that ends up replacing Shadow Freddy later on. Well, we can start a connection to this replacement happening not just with the Phantom Marionette being the only Phantom mostly blacked out like a shadow, but in FNAF 4. In FNAF 4, Shadow Freddy is called Nightmare as per the game files having Nightmare be called Shadow Freddy. So obviously this would have to be important to us, right? Well, it is, as in the FNAF 4 Halloween update, we get a few new characters that replace the Nightmares. Except for Nightmare Freddy, because who cares about him? The main replacement here, though, is actually Nightmarion replacing Nightmare completely, and even getting its own Easter egg within his jumpscare being these incredibly creepy bloodshot eyes when brightened up, starting to signify the importance of this replacement.
Interesting. I'm not sure why, personally, I'm not sure why the eyes would signify the importance of the replacement, but I do like, this is a freaky image. I do like pointing out that they literally do switch places in this Halloween update. That is super interesting.
However, there is something that Scott said about the FNAF 4 Halloween update at the time of its release.
Not canon,
Quote,
right?
Nightmare BB was originally just for the bonus game before I decided to make a separate Halloween edition. However, Nightmare BB fits into the story and can be considered canon, meaning that even though there's some level of importance to Nightmarion, the whole point I just made is null and void, right? Well, not quite, as we skip past Sister Location as I refuse to talk about the mini arenas having a similar phase structure to the puppet and how that works in the lore, we end up in FFPS.
Okay.
In FFPS, there's a possible sight of Shadow Freddy in the starting pizza minigame. Now, whether or not this is Shadow Freddy, it's unknown, as we never have a definitive name for any of these 8-bit characters. Though we can conclude we play as Freddy Fazbear at the very least, and this black bear is named active in the files. Thanks for the name, Scott. Though, why do I say that this isn't Shadow Freddy? Well, in FFPS, we have a second black bear show up, Lefty, for $5. So why is this somehow a connection to Shadow Freddy? Well, as we all know, Shadow Freddy is black, right? Well, kinda. He's also purple, but then in FNAF 4, he's black. I don't know, but regardless, he has appeared as a black bear once before. So when we get to the topic of Lefty, we have to talk about who helps commandeer this dysfunctional animatronic. The puppet is what helps this animatronic move and even has Charlie's voice when speaking to you.
Yeah,
so with the hints of Shadow Freddy trained from a purple bear,
I think help is like maybe not the key word here. Puppet is trapped inside of Lefty. Like, correct me if I'm wrong, but I suppose the puppet does have some agency over Lefty, but it clearly can't have full, right, agency over Lefty. Like, I can see a world where the puppet gets back full control of Lefty. It's just like when Nero says what helps Lefty, it feels like they are in an alliance and they're these two separate beings. But like, correct me if I'm wrong, Lefty is just a suit that is being piloted in some capacity by the puppet, but also by like the creator, which is presumably Henry, right? Like Henry created Lefty. So Henry is the pilot of Lefty, at least until the puppet is in there and potentially gains more control than Henry had. I don't know. I don't know. That's so interesting. I don't know how important it is. to the overall theory. I just was saying, my point is just that I don't know that help is the word that I would use, even though, like, I'm being, like, such a nitpicker right now by even saying it, so just, maybe ignore me. I mean, don't fully ignore me. I like that you're here. Okay. Get a grip, nervous.
To a black bear, and now the last appearance of Shadow Freddy was being replaced by Nightmare Own, and now the puppet literally controlling a black bear. It starts to bring our connection between these two characters.
I see what
But
you're
currently,
saying.
this still all means nothing due to Nightmare Own still not being canon at this point.
Okay,
However, this
okay.
is about to change with this channel's favorite game, 14 Theory just came. It's UCN. UCN is Nightmare Own's first canon appearance in the franchise, and it's here to stay.
Right, okay.
In this
Fair
game, we
enough.
actually have both Nightmare returning and Nightmare Own in the same place, alongside some of the other Halloween update nightmares. So this again should raise the same issue as the FNAF 2 Dream cutscenes, right? Well, actually, this game creates a really good solution for us. Now, their mechanics don't quite reflect one another. However, their voice lines touch on very similar topics, just in different fonts. For example,
Okay, buddy.
both of these lines are just the same line in different fonts, such as Nightmare killing William and bringing him back to life, and Nightmare Own killing William and knowing he'll come back to life, as well as both
Okay.
of them saying the representations of William's creations in different ways. Nightmare Own is just more straightforward than Nightmare is on this topic.
Okay. 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 I'm picking up what you're putting down. Okay. I do appreciate the connection between, like, Lefty being a black bear and Nightmare slash Shadow Freddy being black bears. I don't know how I feel about it in the timeline of it all. I mean, okay. If it's a retcon, because the title of this video is Scott Cawthon is a retconning FNAF's Unsolvable Mystery. So if we're going to say that, like, oh, I don't know, we'll have to get there. 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 For right now, there's a lot of red string. It's not all connecting for me. I'll just say it like that.
The final nail in the coffin for this game for me is the fact that Nightmare Own is actually the poster boy for this game instead of Nightmare. The reason why this is interesting to me, as it wouldn't be impossible to make Nightmare the poster boy. Even their jump scares in FNAF 4 line up very well, so Scott chose to make a previously non-canon FNAF character canon and the poster boy of essentially the ending of the Scott Cawthon era of FNAF games. I mean,
Okay.
even I was able to do this in a few seconds in Canva. And trust me, it only gets worse from here on the Nightmare and Shadow Freddy erasure from the now modern era of Five Nights at Freddy's. Now, sadly, there isn't much with FNAF AR, as Illumix absolutely sucks and ended up
Okay. One thing I was going to say is that I do feel that the Nightmare Own character is a more striking thumbnail, square for the game, just based on what Nero presented here with us with the Canva creation. Yeah. Okay. So Illumix sucks. That's canon. Got it.
keeping possible lore from us with planned characters such as Lefty and Nightmare Own. However, we do have one piece of evidence to talk about, though it doesn't quite apply to the puppet, but rather Springtrap. In this game, Springtrap steals a lot of Nightmare's voice lines, though considering this hasn't been elaborated on, I'm unsure if anything from this game should be considered canon anymore, or not, since a lot of what we should have gotten never came from that lore. Honestly, my one request is, Scott, even if it isn't AR, make a FNAF quote-unquote AR game or director's cut to give us the lore we missed out on.
Yeah,
It might
fair
end
enough.
up making the modern story easier to understand, though what do I know what is planned? Though, if Springtrap is a
If that stuff is truly important, lore relevant kind of stuff that was intended to be used to solve something and not auxiliary stuff, if it was truly meant to be giving us, pertinent pieces of information that would need to be a part of the solution, I would completely agree with that. Because I do struggle. It also, so much of Vanessa's history was tied up in FNAF AR, and one could say that those things that just got dropped, changed, whatever, etc. I don't love that for obvious reasons, but it would be really nice if then we could get the information given it. Oh my gosh, they could just release even another activity book that is like some kind of manual for whatever the special delivery company is, right? That has maybe those emails in it. So that way we have some sort of canon connection to those emails. Obviously, for all intents and purposes, there's not really a reason to say that FNAF AR isn't canon, but the game is defunct at this point. It doesn't exist anymore, and it was unfinished, which is really, really, really terribly unfortunate. So I think it would clear a lot of things up if maybe we had some sort of just print media, even an ebook or something like that, that was released that sort of just gave us the pertinent information from FNAF AR, that you didn't have to develop a whole other game. You could just take the existing assets, compile them into a little something and give that to us as sort of like some kind of leftover employee information or whatever from special delivery. I don't know. I don't know the best way to package it, but that's kind of just my 2 cents on the subject.
Essentially stealing Nightmare's voice lines, and Nightmare Own was planned for the game and not Nightmare.
Okay,
This could
yeah.
be evidence, but it's hard to say for sure there, honestly. So for now, let's move on to the juicy stuff of this theory.
Okay. Let's go,
Help 1
Juice.
has some of the best evidence for this theory, and it boggles my mind even while recording this. In Help 1, we get only 5 Nightmare animatronics in this game. First is the Nightmare Endo, then Nightmare Fredbear, then Nightmare BB, then Plushtrap, and lastly Nightmare Own, making this Nightmare Own's second canon appearance, though if you want to consider AR's plans for Nightmare Own being in that game, then third canon appearance. However, what's most interesting is we do get Nightmare Fredbear in this game fully with mechanics and everything. And out of everything, you'd think a recolor of Nightmare Fredbear would be pretty easy, considering they quite literally did that in one of the original trailers when Nightmare Fredbear had Nightmare Freddy's color palette. But instead, our harder version of the Nightmare Fredbear level belongs to Nightmare
So
Own,
scary.
to the point where it's the only level for FNAF 4 in this game where the whole entire set changes into a more destroyed and nightmarish version, completely replacing what Nightmare should have had. Alongside something that I intentionally didn't mention when bringing up Nightmare Own in FNAF 4, when Nightmare Own is in both FNAF 4 and Help Wanted, you can hear the Marionette's music box from FNAF 2 playing, giving us more of a connection here between Nightmare Own, Shadow Freddy, and the puppet. This now leads us into our next game, which really begins to confirm our suspicion that the puppet, or Nightmare Own, has replaced Shadow Freddy. In Security Breach, Nightmare Own is everywhere in this game, such as hiding above you using a giant Freddy plush on top of some boxes, and many more locations throughout this game, always pointed to watch you when you're in that said room. This alone makes this twisted version of the puppet important, as even Scott said that during the development he told Steel Wool to put certain things in certain places, this very much being one of them. The locations for each of these plushies are outside of Monty Golf in the golf ball ride, near Rockstar Row on top of a big toy Freddy plush, in the basement of Bonnie Bowl on top of some boxes,
I just love this little guy. Sorry.
And in the Endo warehouse as a collectible. There are currently 2 of these locations I mainly want to bring up. First is the one in the basement of Bonnie Bowl. Now, this isn't really much for our theory, but something I thought I'd bring up. While playing Security Breach looking for all the locations, I found it interesting that in this basement, there's 2 things to note. First is obviously the Nightmare Own plush above you on the boxes. However, in front of you is text that says SOS. Now, the reason that this is interesting is that many theorists have brought up how Fiona and Nightmare Own are close to one another. And with there being a Nightmare Own plush,
yeah, I have seen that, and I do really like all of that evidence. I will, let me go back just so you can see these 2 videos. Definitely worth your time. Super interesting. I appreciate it. I appreciate people doing this digging, because I've always thought that, like, I'm sure, no, I'm far from the only one. Like, we've all kind of seen that sort of like through line in Security Breach, especially with the striped wires and things like that, that signal to us that the puppet is at play in this area, in this pizzaplex, and all of the questions around, but why? And is it really the puppet, or is it something taking on the form of the puppet? Is it, and tying it all to Fiona, I think is very satisfying. They set her up as a puppeteer. I think that it's obvious that she's connected to the storyteller type direction that seems to be taking place in the game timeline. that is obviously not the one-to-one from the books, from the Tales from the Pizzaplex books. They have, like, their storyteller. It seems that they are deviating from that with Fiona based on the narrative parallels between those 2 characters, so I would have to agree. Okay, I'm just yapping. I have a lot more. It's interesting. I have a lot more to say about like anything that doesn't necessarily have to do with the Shadow Animatronics.
Theorists have brought up how Fiona and Nightmarion are close to one another.
Right.
And with there being a Nightmarion plush in a basement-like area with SOS on the wall, it really makes me feel like this is a F10N4 reference from Secret of the Mimic, where all she's trying to do is escape where she is. Though the actual meat and potatoes here is actually what Nightmarion is called in this game. In the Endo warehouse, you can find a secret area with a lot of moon imagery, claw marks on the walls, and a single lone Endo in the center of the room. In front of it is a box, and in it is the Nightmare plush. Scott and Steel will quite literally just took Xiao Frei's Nightmare version and slapped it onto Nightmarion. This literally can't get any more direct than this with the replacement of Xiao Frei with the puppet or Nightmarion. Now to derail really fast, one thing that I and other theorists have noticed after looking in this room is you have one of the Glamrock Endos in this room, which we know this is essentially a quote-unquote M3 due to how they mimic what we teach them in Help Wanted 2's Endo Warehouse game. Though with the combination of all the moon imagery, if we're getting these hints with the mimic and moon, and plus the puppet being made by MCM originally, it could be possible that Nightmarion has connection to the moon character and MCM.
Yeah, I'm okay. I'm seeing it. I'm seeing it.
Though to derail even further, there's something in Security Breach I noticed, and I have no clue what or if it means anything, but thought I'd bring it up.
Okay.
In Security Breach, you would think there would be puppet plushies, and well, there is. However, I went through the whole Pizzaplex 3 times with other theorists, and there are only a total of 2 puppet plushies that I and others were able to find. One was in the vat.
How does that compare to the others, right? What? How many Nightmarion plushies are there? What, like 5?
This very much being one of them. The locations for each of these plushies are outside of Monty Golf in the golf ball ride, near Rockstar Row on top of a big toy Freddy plush, in the basement of Bonnie Bowl on top of some boxes, and in the Endo warehouse as a collection.
So it's just half as many. I'm just saying, like, it, you know, if we're talking about like, oh my gosh, there are so many of these other ones. 2 is not, you know, if there were only 1, then maybe I would say like, oh wow, interesting. But I don't know. Because like the puppet shows up in other places, right? Like on the arcade games and stuff, we see the puppet. So it's not like, whatever. Okay, sorry. We'll go back to where I was.
That I and others were able to find. One was in the vat area near where you make the pizza in the game, essentially where Fizzy Faz is in Help Wanted 2, and in the DJ men's bathroom, where the janitor closet is right in front of you as you enter it. This one being for sure intentional, as you do have to go into this room to pull the lever for the DJ boss fight.
Okay.
In case you're wondering about Fizzy Faz, one of the puppet plushies does appear in Help Wanted 2 in the same spot in Security Breach, making this also an intentional placement. Though honestly, I have no clue what it means, so let me know what you think in the comments. Now, Ruin doesn't have much new to say about the Nightmarion character, as the plushies appear yet again around the place, and the collectible name for the plush is still Nightmare, doubling down on what they called it in Security Breach. That's pretty much all there is, and honestly, it's the same for Help Wanted 2, where it appears twice in the game, next to the main show stage in the non-AR area, and the Princess Quest 4 game behind a pillar. Now, I want to bring...
That's the craziest one to me, is that it shows up in the Princess Quest 4 game. Like, that's the one that is the craziest to me.
Bring attention to Help Wanted 2, mainly the PQ4 Nightmarion plush location. This is a character that's appearing not only in a virtual world, but in the physical world at the same time. Now, if this doesn't ring a few alarm bells, it will in a second. In FNAF World, Nightmarion has a set of skills. Skills that is acquired from a long time. Skills that make it a nightmare for creatures like the Flan. The one specific skill I want to talk about is...
the way the Flan is like, oh yeah, it ain't cute.
Fourth wall, which only 2 characters in this game share. Anim Dude.
I've heard this before. I've heard people make this connection before about like the fact that fourth wall is specifically a power granted to Nightmarion. And they were connecting it to the Princess Quest thing, is what I'm trying to say.
Scott Cawthon and Nightmarion, which is very interesting to give Nightmarion, unless this was the start of what is going on with this character all along. Nightmarion was never canon, however, through digital imaginings of him such as in FNAF 4, FNAF World, Help Wanted, it slowly started to digitally manifest in the real world, something that the hand unit in the beginning of Help Wanted warned us of.
You acknowledge that Fazbear Entertainment is not responsible for accidental digital consciousness transference, real-world manifestations of digital characters, nightmares, night terrors, night sweats.
This is something we also know the puppet does in itself, as in Ticket to Fun, we can see the drawing of Charlie outside of Freddy Fazbear's Pizza, something we see in FFPS in the security puppet minigame that normally shouldn't be there. It's just a reverse of the roles here. Puppet digitally manifests in the digital world to tell us a story, and Nightmare On physically manifests in the physical world to accomplish whatever it may be. Even in Help Wanted 1, its whole mechanic is taking the whole area, breaking it down, and using out-of-bounds areas to attack you, such as from the ceiling, which is just a black void. Though you're probably
Oh,
wondering about Coffee Pot and
okay.
Chip, and honestly, they're really easy to explain. They're actual real-life creations of a machine. Especially El Chip literally just being a Stan's budget tech ripoff, and then Coffee Pot, who looks like something Edwin would have made as a prototype for the Stay Up Latte. Now, my last piece of evidence for you all today is just the fact that Jackie starts to turn into Nightmare On throughout its section in Secret of the Mimic.
Okay, but that's I've seen people debate that, and I'm on board with it personally, but I have seen people debate it. So let me just say that I don't know that that's something that is a fact, but I do know what Nero's talking about here, and I think it's compelling.
From losing its nose to look more like the marionette, to gain black tear streaks to look like Nightmare On, and Jackie's jump scare sound having Nightmare On's jump scare sound at the end of it, for example. And with the puppet designs
This
in
part.
Secret of the Mimic, if you're a believer of the Dreamer of FNAF 4 being in as early as 1983, if the puppet designs were thought of and possibly made, it could explain Nightmare On in FNAF 4 as a retcon if you wanted to go that far, though I personally don't believe that. So what should you take away from this theory? Well, you should take away that there seems to be some sort of erasure from Nightmare and that role being filled in by Nightmare On in the modern Steel Wool era.
Okay.
The next thing to take away is a possibility that Nightmare On may be the real-world manifestation warning Hand Unit gave us in Help Wanted 1. Explain why he starts to randomly appear after Help Wanted 1 in the physical world. Next is that it seems Nightmare On, Moon, the Mimics, Jackie, and F10N4 seem to have some sort of connection we don't have the full puzzle pieces to. And most importantly of all, this whole entire theory is not confirmed. Not one bit. Maybe these are all puzzle pieces and I connected them wrong. Maybe they're all coincidences and I'm in the white Faz room. At the end of the day, it's up to you, the viewer, what you think on this theory and what it tells you. We didn't throw in a lot of weird ones in there, but hey, who am I to judge having evidence I'll never use in another video, so I just threw it in here. Well, of course, before you go, I want to promote the next few episodes of the 14th Locker podcast. Currently, I have a planned interview with the creator of The Obsessive Shadow and a debate with Clavis Key about friendship theory, alongside plans to interview another big creator in the near future.
Oh my gosh, Clavis Key you're going to talk about, oh my God. Sorry, I guess I have lag. OMG. Okay, we'll definitely watch that. And if you haven't seen Friendship Theory, watch Friendship Theory. How exciting. Okay, well, thank you so very much, Nara Raven. I'm not even going to let you promote the rest of this stuff. You should only care about Clavis Key. I'm kidding. Care about the other stuff, but, you know. Okay, so not that this is a big deal or anything, but that wasn't terribly revealing of a whole lot. But I did learn some things about Shadow Freddy I did not know before, so that's very interesting. And I'm not against I'm not against it. I don't think there's anything in there that makes me go like, oh, there's just no way. That's just silly, or this is dumb. There's some pieces of evidence there that are being used by Nero that I don't know if I agree with, particularly the lefty thing. The symbolism, the visual symbolism, I do understand. It's just, I think that would have to be more of like a Scott trying to give us an indication that something is happening rather than like an in-game explanation, which very well may be what all Nero is saying. So like, I might be overthinking that. I would really like to have more commentary on it, but I don't really know what to say besides I think it's plausible. I don't think it's completely bonkers. I don't know if it's necessary. I think that maybe that would be my biggest thing, is going like, I wish I had a better understanding based on this video, like just laid out in this video, of what Shadow Freddy represents, and then how what Nightmare On represents is like a mirror of that. Because I've just watched it, and maybe Nero like talked about it and I missed it, or like just like didn't like digest it or whatever. Talk a lot of digestion talk in today's video, guys. Are we good? Am I good? Because I won't shut up about it. Am I okay? But yeah, I'm a little bit confused, because I obviously, right, we see these two, or sorry, obviously I won't tell you what you think, but obviously I see these two things as like agony manifestations. They're just these sorts of how do I yeah, they're just sorts of I'm trying really hard not to use the word remnant is what's happening right now, but they're just remnants of these horrible events that have happened. And I think that one being a Freddy and one being a puppet is very fitting, right? And even one being a rabbit, I think is very fitting for the overall kind of what the major sources of horror are in this game series, right? The puppet is a particularly visible death. We get a lot of representation of that death. It's particularly because we see so much of it, it's fairly, we see that it's fairly violent and targeted, even potentially in nature. It seems targeted anyway. And obviously Freddy, Shadow Freddy being the other one, um, of these two being, a representation of either the crying child, the vengeful spirit, or some combination of that. We'll leave that back here, but I think that is fair because if it's the crying child, again, another very visible death, one that we get to witness, okay, one that we witness, and the vengeful spirit obviously being like a character that we encounter that does have a lot of lore relevance, even though it is up for debate who the vengeful spirit actually is. And then of course Shadow Bonnie being potentially kind of just this evil, I don't know, reflection of the fact that rabbits are sinister in this game. Or there is a sinister rabbit in this game. I don't know. I'm just throwing things out there. I see it. This is the thing, is like what everything Nero's saying, I'm like, I see it. I do see it. I don't know if I'm taking that on as like my reality, or like what I'm going with moving forward, but I do get it. And I see the through line. Like I'm seeing the story that Nero is, telling is one that I can follow that much, but it's as far as the like their purpose and like these things, it's like I don't know, maybe that's just still so wishy-washy. Especially with the shadows, because we just don't get a whole lot of information about them, confirmed or otherwise. Can you tell that I'm driving myself crazy with my bangs right now? They're not even, and I can tell that they're not even, and they're not doing the same thing on both sides. This side is falling so nice and cute. And then what's going on over here? I don't know. Anyway, I shouldn't look at myself, frankly, is the answer. So anyway, I don't know. I'm not being terribly enlightening. The whole point of this was for me to like do some low effort content, so that's fine either way. But I don't know. I guess I just wish I had more to say but I mean, at the end of the day, I'm glad that we get to spend some time together, if nothing else. I guess, okay, that's what I'll leave this with. I'm going to pose some questions to you to help me. You've watched the video now. I would love to hear if you agree with this line of thinking or not. And if you do, can you give me some insight as to how these characters... Oh, well, he did talk about the following and stuff like that. So maybe there's just some connection and like the ability to kind of communicate and manipulate the will of the spirits and things like that. But to finish my inquiry unto you, I'd love to hear like your whys or why nots about what you think about this. And also I'd love to hear if you can get it in like a paragraph, like 5 to 6 sentences, so that my poor little brain can process it. I'd love to hear kind of your personal take on the Shadow Animatronics. I think I still feel... Okay, we all know that I'm a big fan of the Remnant and the things like that. So if all of this is a continuation of that, I can absolutely see how we are and how like the VR and AR kind of elements being brought in are creating these like physical manifestations of things that used to purely exist digitally. I wonder, because obviously Nara Raven is talking about the retcon of it all being shifting from Shadow Freddy to Nightmare Own. which wouldn't be impossible, but would also be interesting if it was just that Nightmare On is just what happened to be the physical manifestation, and it could have just as easily been Shadow Freddy. That's just what it just ended up being the other way. Agony / Remnant. I know that they're not technically the same thing, but I'm just gonna talk about them kind of in the same vein. Being something that an AR / VR crazy high-tech experience could physically manifest. I don't think that's out of line for Five Nights at Freddy's. I think that's something that Five Nights at Freddy's would be able to write in and it not be totally like, what? And so Nightmare On being the physical manifestation that comes to fruition from all of that does make sense to me based on everything that we've seen. And her connection to and Nightmare On being a puppet kind of creature, puppet-based creature, and Fiona being a puppeteer, and all of the other things that are in those other videos. I think that's all great. I think the only thing I don't follow is why it necessarily is a retcon. I feel like it could just very well be that these were purely digital artifacts, because now in the new world of Five Nights at Freddy's, we know that these are games, at least some of these games, a portion of these games. I won't, it's debatable which ones necessarily, but at least the ones that we definitely see in the VR and Help Wanted are in-universe games. And it could very well be that up to this point, like I was trying to say before, I don't know if I articulated very well, that the Shadow Animatronics were just things that are only manifesting in the games. Similarly to kind of how Narrow Raven was pointing out, like they're there to tell us something further, right? That maybe we wouldn't have seen otherwise, or maybe to make us question what we're seeing or something like that. I don't know. Kind of trying to get us, get our minds in thinking about stuff, or they're just a manifestation of like Agony, Remnant, or whatever, and they don't necessarily have that much agency. They're more just strong emotions existing inside of this game because Agony, Remnant things attached to artificial intelligences and whatnot. I don't think I'm making a whole lot of sense, but I hope I think there are some of you that are like with me, all right? And for those of you that are with me, thank you for staying with me. And for the rest of you, don't blame me at all. It has everything to do with my delivery and nothing to do with your comprehension. But it's very possible that that's really, like, rather than it being a retcon, it could just be that these entities, like, have existed, but it just so happened that Nightmare On, potentially due to the fact that maybe Fiona particularly, or the Fiona personality, the Fiona AI, particularly latched onto Nightmare On, could be why that one in particular physically manifested rather than it being a flip from Shadow Freddy to the puppet / Nightmare On. I just, that's the part that I'm a little shaky on, but I do appreciate some of the stuff that's it's getting my brain juices flowing. I do it like that. I want to see real quick what some other people in the comments have said, actually. One of the first comments here literally is, retcon is a bit of a strong term for something we never got information to begin with. That would be the thing that has my brain going like, is it retcon or is it something else? But I'd love to hear it. Nero replied, so we'll hear this. I prefer to call it algo maxing. Okay, fair enough. Okay, so we're saying retconning, but maybe that's not really how Narrow Raven feels. Okay, I feel like this video was named something else prior, so I don't know. Okay, here's something somebody said. Nightmare On's connection to Shadow Freddy is right there, and you just missed it. In what? I hate you. I'm sorry. Y'all are great. I love y'all. You're great. What are we doing? Can you just type it out? TTC? I'm sure you all just are like nervous. You're an idiot. It's this. I don't care. Please don't make me think like that. TTC? This is one of the mini games, isn't it? Anyway, we play as Freddy inside Freddy's, and we learn the puppet was outside Freddy's looking for Charlie. Later, if an agony creature were to be created from this incident, it would have been to alternate between a Freddy form and a puppet form. This basically gets confirmed that the gray Freddy in fake FFPS is Shadow Freddy. Lefty's appearance symbolically represents this entity. I think that's enough for today. I hope that we enjoyed this. I just hope you enjoyed spending some time with me. I've been filming for about an hour, and that was about as long as I wanted to give myself for this. So I hope that if you celebrate any kind of like holidays around this time, that they are nice and that you have a good time. And if you don't, I hope you know that it's temporary and things will go back to normal soon. Everything here I know is very blank right now. It's in flux. So hopefully by next video, we'll be fully set up in a new little setup that I've decorated, and if not, it'll still be in flux. So just be with me as I am in flux, and if you have ideas for things I can put on the wall behind me, I'd love to hear them in the comments. If you celebrate like Turkey Days, Thanksgiving, however you call it, Friendsgiving, all that good stuff, I hope that you are stuffed. I hope you've got leftovers. And if it's a completely different time of year when you're watching this, and for some reason you came back to this video way late in the future, how's it going? Report in. What's it like where you're from? I'll check the comments probably. So, I'd love to know. And with that, I will remind you one more time to please go watch last week's Amanda the Adventurer video. It's about the art of Amanda the Adventurer. It would mean so much to me if you would watch it. Otherwise, I will potentially be back next week. I may take next week off. I don't know. I'm very, you guys know that I'm not as consistent as I used to be right now. I'm working on it, but it's also the holiday times and everything is just kind of in flux in my house right now as well. But anyway, I think that's about it for this week. So before you go, make sure to like the video if you enjoyed it and subscribe if you haven't already to become a part of the nervous system. I upload new videos every week, usually, and go live on Wednesdays and Fridays, usually. But if you can't wait, there are videos on the screen right now just for you. Okay, bye! And don't forget to tell me your ideas for this little guy. It's very important.